Why are you running? I will race you to the corner, Ellen. Aunt Mary adjusted the thick leather pack on her back so that her school books balanced evenly. Ready? She looked at her best friend. Ellen made a face. No, she said, laughing. You know I can't beat you. My legs aren't as long. Can't we just walk like civilized people? She was a stocky 10-year-old, unlike lanky Aunt Mary. We have to the practice for the athletic meet on Friday. I know I'm going to win the girls' race this week. I was second last week, but I've been practicing every day. Come on, Ellen, Aunt Mary pleaded, eyeing the distance to the next corner of the Companion Street. Please, Ellen hesitated, then nodded and shoved her own rucksack of books against her shoulders. Oh, all right, ready, she said. Go, shouted Aunt Mary, and the two girls were off, racing along the residential sidewalk. Aunt Mary's silvery blonde hair flew behind her, and Ellen's dark pigtails bounced against her shoulders. Wait for me, wailed little Kirsty, left behind, but the two older girls weren't listening. Aunt Mary outdistanced her friend quickly, even though one of her shoes came untied as she sped along the street called Ulster Brogade, past the small shops and capes of her neighborhood here in Northeast Copenhagen. Laughing, she skirted on elderly lady in black who carried a shopping bag made of string. A young woman pushing a baby in a carriage moved aside to make way. The corner was just ahead. Aunt Mary looked it up, panting, just as she reached the corner. Her ladder stopped. Her heart seemed to skip a bit. Halt! The soldier heard it in a stern voice. The German word was as familiar as it was frightening. Aunt Mary had heard it often enough before, but it had never been directed at her until now. Behind her, Ellen also slowed and stopped it. Far back, little Kirsty was plodding along, her face in a boat because the girls hadn't waited for her. Aunt Mary stared it up. There were two of them. That meant two helmets, two sets of cold eyes glaring at her, and four tall shiny boots planted firmly on the sidewalk, blocking her path to home. And it meant two rifles. Gripped in the hands of the soldier, she stared at the rifles first. Then finally, she looked into the face of the soldier who had ordered her to halt. Why are you running? The harsh voice asked it. His Danish was very poor. 3 years, Aunt Mary thought with contempt. 3 years they've been in our country and still they can't speak our languages. I was racing with my friend, she answered it politely. We have races at school every Friday and I want to do well. So her voice trailed it away. The sentence unfinished. Don't talk so much, she told herself. Just answer them, that's all. She glanced back. Ellen was motionless on the sidewalk, a few yards behind her. Further back, Kirsty was still slunking and walking slowly toward the corner. Nearby, a woman had come to the doorway of the shop and was standing silently, watching. One of the soldiers, the taller one, moved toward her. Aunt Mary recognized him as the one she and Ellen always called it in whispers, the giraffe, because of his height and the long neck that extended from his stiff collar. He and his partner were always on this corner. He prodded the corner of her backpack with the stock of his rifle. Aunt Mary trembled. "What is in here?" he asked it loudly. From the corner of her eye, she saw the storekeeper move quietly back into the shadows of the doorway, out of sight. "School books," she answered it truthfully. "Are you a good student?" the cold soldier asked it. He seemed to be steering. "Yes." "What is your name?" "Aunt Marie Johansson." "Your friend, is she a good student too?" He was looking beyond her, at Alan, who hadn't moved it. Aunt Marie looked it back too, and saw that Alan's face, usually rose-cheeked, was pale, and her dark eyes were wide. She nodded at the soldier. "Better than me," she said. "What is her name, Alan? And who is this?" he asked it, looking to Aunt Marie's side. Kirsty had appeared there suddenly, scowling at everyone. "My little sister." She reached down for Kirsty's hand, but Kirsty, always stubborn, refused it and put her hands on her hips defiantly. The soldier reached down and stroked her little sister's short, tangled curls. "Stand still, Kirsty," Aunt Marie ordered sternly, praying that somehow the obstinate 5-year-old would receive the message. But she reached up and pushed the soldier's head away. "Don't," she said loudly. Both soldiers began to laugh. They spoke to each other in repeated German that Aunt Marie couldn't understand. "She is pretty, like my own little girl," the tall one said in a more pleasant voice. And Marie tried to smile politely. "Go home, all of you. Go study your school books. And don't run. You look like hoodlums when you run." The two soldiers turned it away. Quickly, Aunt Marie reached down again and grabbed her sister's hand before Kirsty could resist. Hurrying the little girl along, she rounded the corner. In a moment, Alan was beside her. They walked quietly, not speaking, with Kirsty between them, toward the large apartment building where both families lived. When they were almost home, Alan whispered it suddenly. "I was so scared." "Me too," Aunt Mary whispered it back. As they turned to enter their building, both girls looked straight ahead toward the door. They did it purposely so that they would not catch the eyes or the attention of two more soldiers, who stood with their guns on this corner as well. Kirsty skirted ahead of them through the door, chattering about the picture she was bringing home from kindergarten to show Mama. For Kirsty, the soldiers were simply part of the landscape, something that had always been there on every corner, as unimportant as lampposts throughout for her remembered life. "Are you going to tell your mother?" Alan asked Aunt Mary as they trudged together up the stairs. "I'm not. My mother would be upset." "No, I won't either. Mama would probably scold me for running on the street." She said goodbye to Alan on the second floor, where Alan lived, and continued on to the third, practicing in her mind a cheerful greeting for her mother, a smile, a description of today's spelling test, in which she had done well, but she was too late. Kirsty had gotten there first, and he poked Aunt Mary's book back with his gun, and then he grabbed my hair. She was chittering as she took off her sweater in the center of the apartment living room. "But I wasn't scared. Aunt Mary was, and Alan too, but not me." Mr. Johansson rose quickly from the chair by the window where she'd been sitting. Mrs. Rosen, Alan's mother, was there too in the upside chair. They'd been having coffee together, as they did many different afternoons. Of course, it wasn't really coffee, though the mother still called it that having coffee. There had been no real coffee in Copenhagen since the beginning of the Nazi occupation, not even any real tea. The mother sipped it at hot water flavored with herbs. Anne Marie, what happened? What is Ch.1 talking about? Her mother asked it unexpectedly. Where's Alan? Mrs. Rosen had a frightened look. Alan's in your apartment. She didn't realize you were here. Aunt Marie explained it. Don't worry, it wasn't anything. It was the two soldiers who stand on the corner of Ulster Brogade. You've seen them, you know, the tall one with the long neck. The one who looks like a silly giraffe. She told her mother and Mr. Rosen of the incident, trying to make it sound humorous and important, but their uneasy looks didn't change. I slapped his hand and shouted at him. She announced importantly. No, she didn't, Mama, Aunt Marie reassured her mother. She's exaggerating as she always does. Mr. Johansson moved to the window and looked down to the street below. The Copenhagen neighborhood was quiet. It looked the same as always, people coming and going from the shops, children at play. The soldier on the corner, she spoke in a low voice to Alan's mother. They must be angry because of the latest resistance includence. Did you read in Danska about the bombings in Hilliard and Norbro? Although she pretended to be absorbed in unpacking her school books, and Mary listened, and she knew what her mother was referring to. That Danske, the Free Danes, was an illegal newspaper. Pater Nelson brought it to them occasionally, carefully folded and hidden among ordinary books and papers, and Mama always burned it after she and Papa had read it. But Aunt Mary had heard Mama and Papa talk sometimes at night about the news they received them that way. News of sabotage against the Nazis, bombs hidden and exploded in the factories that produced war materials, and industrial railroad lines damaged so that the goods couldn't be transported. And she knew what resistance meant. Papa had explained it. When she overheard the word and asked it, the resistance fighters were Danish people. No one knew who, because they were very secret, who were determined to bring harm to the Nazis however they could. They imagined the German trucks and cars and bombed their factories. They were very brave. Sometimes they were caught and killed. I must go and speak to Alan, Mr. Rosen said, moving toward the door. You girls walk a different way to school tomorrow. Promise me, Aunt Marie, and Alan will promise too. We will, Mr. Rosen, but what does it matter? There are German soldiers on every corner. They will remember your faces, Mr. Rosen said, turning in the doorway to the whole, it is important to be one of the crowd. Always be one of many. Be sure that they never had reason to remember your face. She disappeared into the hall and closed the door behind her. He'll remember my face, Mama, cried she announced happily, because he said I looked like his little girl. He said I was pretty. If he has such a pretty little girl, why doesn't he go back to her like a good father? Mr. Johnson murmured, stroking Chris' cheek. Why doesn't he go back to his own country? Mama, is there anything to eat? Aunt Mary asked it, hoping to take her mother's mind away from the soldier. Take some bread and give a piece to your sister. With butter, she asked it hopefully. No butter, her mother replied. You know that? Christy signed it as Aunt Mary went to the bread box in the kitchen. I wish I could have a cupcake, she said, a big yellow cupcake with pink frosting. Her mother left it for a little girl. You have a long memory, she told Christy. There hasn't been any butter, so sugar for cupcakes for a long time, a year at least. When will there be cupcakes again when the world ends? Mr. Johnson said. She glanced through the window down to the street corner where the soldiers stood, their faces impassive beneath the metal helmets. When the soldiers leave,